Hello and happy champagne channeling to you guys. Thank you for listening. Today's guest is going to be a new friend of mine who I'm sure you guys are used to this by now, met through Instagram. But what is going to be a surprise is for all of you Northern Colorado friends, she is in our backyard. So I am so happy to finally have on the podcast and actually met her in person this morning. Debi KENNISON, welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. I am so happy to be here right now. It feels divinely guided.
Yeah, I know. We definitely had this moment of stalking each other. We did have a little moment where we saw each other in real life, and both of us knew that we had curiosity, but we didn't really get to connect then. And then I think it was after that one of us reached out and we're like, we have to meet.
Yes, I can't remember who it was. And one of us said, was that you?
Yes. At the wine bar?
I felt almost bad because the person I was with, I kept looking over at you and
So
thinking,
did
I want to connect with her, but I'm present with you, but also
I was in the same exact boat. And what's funny is it's all about energy, and Debi works with the divine feminine energy. And so I'm going to let her educate you and me, because I'm not exactly sure everything that she does. I just know I like it a lot.
Well, I feel as though I am a hard person to pin down as to what exactly it is that I do, and I used to feel really bad about this, or really uncomfortable with the idea that I'm multi-passionate, multi-talented, and yeah, like I love all the things. And so truly, when you say a holistic approach, I have a teaching background I taught elementary school for a short period of time, but then I also dove into teaching movement. And so it started with yoga, Pilates, and then it went into somatic therapy. And so the teaching was always, I know that about myself. I am a teacher. That much I know. But, dabbling in energy healing, became a Reiki master, and then learning this, I guess it's more of I don't know. It just sort of happened where all of a sudden now I'm starting to connect with the other side, right?
Yeah.
With this,
Yes.
the veil being so thin now that all of a sudden now I'm receiving messages.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a degree in nutrition, but I also have a degree in biology. So there's this scientific piece of me that's deeply interested in the way our bodies work, the way our minds work. And that is in juxtaposition to this very, it's obvious to me that there is a deep spiritual world that's on the other side, that also deeply fascinates me, that it's like, I don't need proof like the scientists do. I don't need data. I just know what I feel.
Oh.
And so it's really turned into this idea of this very holistic approach, from what we take into our bodies through our ears, our eyes, our mouths, our senses with our touch, smell, and bringing all of those facets into helping people really get well,
Yeah.
and thrive.
And what I love that you use the word juxtaposition. That's one of my favorite words. And
I love it.
being just like in the design world, like I feel like that was something that I always had to have in a space, in a room, in an outfit. And it's just that polarity, that taking something very soft and maybe modern and putting something old and rugged, or the two opposites that when you put together are so beautiful. And that's kind of what it sounds like you're doing, because you have we've talked about it even this morning, but you have a familiarity with the masculine energy, and then loving to teach about the feminine and the awakening that's going on, and then having the knowledge in the mind, but then also having this like feeling in the heart. and then the body and the soul. And that's the dance you're doing. And you're so multifaceted. But after speaking with you, I feel like what you do is you help assist people in healing the feminine wound and really help them anchor into their truth.
Yeah. That certainly seems to be one of the prominent themes. What I realized after so many people getting on my table for energy healing, and especially with energy healing, you know, my goal, the ideal situation is to be able to balance their masculine and feminine energies, the doing with the being.
Mm-hmm.
And it became a way for me to explain to them, for them to feel it in their own bodies. You are too much in your masculine, too much doing. And they would say, oh, 100%. I'm not feeling anything. And I'm actually intentionally trying not to feel what I'm feeling. And that just seemed like such an, you know, terrible thing for us as human beings to be just totally denying that side of ourselves and not wanting to go there. And so, yeah, and it's a whole nother story about going to Mexico and becoming acquainted with Mary Magdalene and Guadalupe and literally having an experience with her. And as my friend says, you were initiated at that point. And so it was like, you must now, Mary Magdalene's dictum is now, you must go and share that message and teach other women about their divine feminine. So
I feel it. I feel it with you for sure. And I can't wait to work with you in that way. I always, I really do a lot of work with the heart chakra, but I'm drawn to like Mother Mary energy because of the inner child work I help lead people through.
yes,
And do myself, but the divine feminine takes us to a whole nother place.
whole nother place. It really, you know, I've always been told I'm soft, I'm very feminine my whole life. But it turns out that, you know, the Blessed Mother Mary and I have the exact same birthday.
Oh.
Every time a psychic connects with me, Mary's there.
Mm-hmm.
And after doing this meditation, I was actually in meditation with a client in something we call the womb space meditation. And I suddenly see just this perfect red rose in my womb space. And
Oh
I
my
went,
gosh. Did you see the email I sent you? It had a red rose. Did you see that?
you're kidding.
Wait, I sent you the link and I just put one emoji and it was a red rose.
Oh my gosh. See, I knew you and I, when you and I had the same color pants on this morning, I knew we were kindred spirits. But yeah, the roses continue to show up. And that is one of the signs that not only have you been healed, I don't know if you know about this. So
I don't, but I just had a reading. So I've talked to you guys and I had her on the podcast. Her name's Diane and she is the animal communicator. And oh my gosh, her last name is, oh, I feel so bad.
I think I know who you're talking
Soul
about.
Places Oasis is her handle, Diane. I've referred so many people to her. In the first session I did, she doesn't connect with you, but she does a reading where she does it and then sends you the recording. And it was all about rose paste, like actually taking roses and making a paste and like lathering it all over my body and not taking it off, like letting it do its work, and that I need to be about roses. And it was, I mean, it was probably 10 minutes of rose talk. So now that you're saying this, I'm like, please tell us about the roses.
Well, it's really interesting because I learned this through my own experience. And before I had gone to Mexico the first time, which was 2020, and it was 6 weeks before shutdown of COVID.
Oh gosh.
And I had been buying myself white roses, just white roses, white roses, white roses. And I didn't know why. I was just drawn to white roses. And essentially, the white rose is purification. And I was doing some really deep feminine wounded healing, you know, for listeners who are, you know, sensitive to sexual assaults. You know, I have had several. And so for me, it was this healing of basically yoni. It was yoni healing. And so when you are either seeing red or white roses, or you are buying yourself white roses, or somehow, whether it's artwork, somewhere you begin to see white roses, that is a sign that you're shifting into this cleansing, this purification of your feminine energy being wounded. Now, you start with a black rose. A black rose would indicate that you have had some trauma. And I remember thinking, I don't really remember, being interested or seeing black roses, but I think back on it and I remember that I had a stage where for some reason, I asked somebody, I said, is there actually a black rose? And they said, no, but you just buy, like a fake one. And they said, there's some symbology behind that. Well, that was years ago and I just let it go. But it was weird that I asked that question, is there actually a black rose?
Mm-hmm.
And so you go from a black rose initiation, which is basically acknowledgement of your wound. You move into a white rose initiation where now you're being purified and cleansed and the healing is beginning. Then you move into pink roses. So again, you may begin buying pink roses or seeing pink roses everywhere. And once you see the pink rose, or you're at that stage, that is where you are beginning you are deep in that healing process. At the point of time where you may see a red rose, or you begin to, experience something around red roses, like people sending you emojis or something like that, that is the point in Mary Magdalene's initiation where you have been anointed by her and now you are healed and you need to share that healing. And it is a mandate from her that she's like, please go and help other women.
Yeah.
And so that happened for me in 2021. And I could just
So
feel
in love with this. I'm so in love with this.
I'm so glad. It was so fascinating to me because it had been coming to the surface little, and this is how she works, right? She just drops little messages here and there for you, little signs, little symbols. And then it all made sense to me. And so once I saw that red rose, I remember reaching out to my friend in Mexico and I told her, and she said, you have to research this because this is major.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then it was funny, I worked with this astrologer that she said, I don't know if you do any divine feminine work, but if you aren't already, you need to get started because it is so you, and it is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So here
I believe it.
here I am. And, experience. This is my own personal experience with it and going through all of those progressions of healing and exploring.
Yeah. So I have the book and then I also have it downloaded and I've started it a couple times, but I haven't been in the right space to really, I don't know. It's like I pressed play a couple times and I haven't got there, but it's the Mary Magdalene Revealed.
Yes, girl.
Is that like a must?
I think it's a must for two reasons. And this is what I tell, because not everybody. So for example, I had a lot of women come to work with me. Now, here's a little factoid about me. I was actually raised as a Jehovah's Witness since I can remember as a child. And then when my parents split up is when, they basically excommunicated my mother for even thinking of getting a divorce, which I think is a terrible thing, but that's a whole nother topic. But I was grateful because I wanted out. It never resonated with me. And so when that shift happened in my life, I remember struggling with religion. And I did not feel as though religion was my path. And that's when I began to really learn like the difference between spirituality and religion. And so I've had several women come to me that have been in a deep relationship with the Christian church or with, God. And I think this book spoke to them because Megan Watterson does the most extraordinary job of explaining how Christianity is so male dominated that, take the example, Mary Magdalene's a whore. She's a prostitute. And then you have the Virgin Mary. There's no in between. There's no in between. And in the yogic world, we deal a lot with duality. And a lot of the work is recognizing that I'm a whore and I'm a virgin. And what that really means. I can be both. And every one of us is both. And it does such a disservice to women. Megan Watterson is a feminist, but really it's all historical. She goes into the history of how Mary Magdalene was so misrepresented and so underestimated, and so she was relegated to, the cellars of Christianity, when really her relationship with Christ was one of an equal. And in some ways, she also taught him from her feminine perspective. So I think it may help people who are dissatisfied with Christianity, not understanding how, all we do is talk about the Heavenly Father, but we don't talk about the mother at all, except for she's a whore or she's a virgin. And that leaves so little room for what women really are, and to exist in this world, in a space that is black or white, and so, yes, she's a feminist, but there's also this deeply historic, and, this woman she says, I'm not a religious person. I just really deeply wanted to understand Mary for some reason and what her story was. And Mary's story is every one of our stories as women. So it's so relevant because I think as you read it, you can see yourself in this book. And, it's so fascinating to me to work with these women who are breaking away from the church and trying to reconcile that. And they find this sense of like, oh, no wonder, because I never had a voice. It was always my husband. It was always God. There was nothing feminine, referenced really.
Yeah. I think it's hard sometimes when people are on such firm platforms, because there's always people that misuse those platforms. Like, even like we're seeing in politics today, like the people that are far, far right or far, far left are a bit insane. And that's what we're hearing, or that's what we see represent those titles. And so feminism is something that, and I'll admit it, like there's some feminists that leave a really bad taste in my mouth.
Absolutely.
And it's hard because just as much, I'm almost like hearing my words being repeated again, because I just had an interview with Vika Bradford on the story of Lilith and astrology, and the wound around femininity. And man, was that interesting. And that's actually going to come out a week after your podcast launches. So I'm glad that this
listen to it.
I know. And then even hearing this, like I felt some tears well up in my eyes, because I can feel the energy of the wound, but I'm still nervous to dive into it in fear that I'll abandon the masculine, which I love so much. And I don't think that I will forget what I know or who I am. But when you really dive into the depths of such a deep wound, and I'm a Pisces moon, and I know depth and darkness very well. I
Yes.
have gotten lost in the darkness around suffering. And I think that's maybe why I'm scared, is because it's going to resonate a little too much. And maybe listeners can relate to that, but we can't ever be completely whole if there's still a darkness we're afraid of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think you're wrong in, I think that we have that fear. And it strikes me like in politics now, again, we are not engaging with the feminine in politics at all. I mean, in fact, the opposite, right? You look at what's happened with abortion rights and women's reproductive rights. We don't care about the woman. So, but I do think that all of this is coming up as a way of finding some balance once again, and finally having some of these very, very tough, very dark conversations around this. And in my mind, that's where, I've studied feminism and the feminist movements in the past. And I think a lot of where it went wrong in the past was that these feminists actually took on a very masculine approach.
Yes.
Of ramrodding and forcing. And while I do believe that as women, we need to protest, but I actually, in my conversations with other peers, the conversation we get into is, the feminine actually works more on like the down low, where I feel like if we start this underground movement very quietly, we tiptoe in, that's so feminine, and then we sneak attack. And I feel like that's really what is happening now, is one by one, just in the work that I do, to awaken the woman to her own power in a very quiet, loving way. Like it is all heart-centered, every bit of this feminine work. So it's not forcing anything, shouting from the mountaintops. This is a very quiet approach to this, where, hey, have you thought about, let me remind you of the power of the woman. So I don't know, it's going to be really different, and really, I'm hopeful about this shift that, we always seem to have to swing this way in the pendulum first before we can find that middle ground.
It makes me nervous though. And it's just funny. We use the same words. We are so funny for not knowing each other. We sure do talk.
Yeah.
The same talk. Yeah. And I'm nervous that the pendulum actually is going to swing too far to the other side before it comes down and balances out. And that's probably not going to be in our lifetime. But I am nervous because that's the way it goes, right? Like this got misused. It was way over here, and we're going to watch it go way over here. And I like to tell women, we do not heal the wounds of the unhealthy patriarchy by becoming more masculine. We heal it by becoming unapologetically feminine. And that is so what you said. And I've become more feminine in my life. And the more that I lean into my femininity, the way and the amount and the speed of my manifestation has drastically increased. And it's not because I demand, it's not because I attack, it's not because I fight, it's not because I overly verbalize or shout. It's because I'm very clear on my non-negotiables. So I attract what I want because there's no other option.
Exactly.
I started doing it with a parking spot. Like, I'm like, I am a front row parker and it's a non-negotiable, and I'll go home. Like, I really, truly will. No, I have never done that because I've never really not got the parking spot that I've envisioned before I go to the place that I'm going. And it's not even a big deal. It's a joke. It's a funny joke, but it showed me my power. And so if I can manifest front row parking, then let's up the ante. I mean, why not? I have nothing to lose.
Exactly.
I've done it, and I do it all the time. And then you kind of almost get a little bored because things don't have a wow factor anymore, because you do live in a life of your creation.
Yeah.
And so be here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm magic.
Yes.
So what else can I
Yes.
do?
Yes. And feminine energy too. I mean, maybe I've learned this from somebody else, but I want to know if you teach the same thing, but it's all about more. Like there's never an ending. And we're taught, like, if you have this wish and you get it, be so thankful, hold on to it so tight so it never leaves. And then that's it. And with manifestation, it's all moving. And the minute you try to hold it tight, you're stopping the movement of energy.
And I completely agree with that, even if it's just that you're manifesting joy, even if it, or wealth, and to not be ashamed of that. I don't know if you've ever heard this definition of manifestation. It's my favorite. And it kind of ties in with what you're talking about, because if we say manifestation, you will manifest exactly what you desire when you see yourself the same way that God, Spirit, Source sees you.
Yeah.
When you hold yourself as sacred, as magic, as limitless, because you are love, it is boundless, it is limitless, and the potential is limitless. There is no limit to it. So it's not that I necessarily need more. I'll be very content with what I have. But for me, the way that has shown up is the more shows up in helping more women.
Exactly. Yes.
Having a greater impact. Finding an even sweeter and richer spot of magic in other people's lives that I never could have imagined. Yeah. So that's where the more for me even shows up. Now the wealth, I wouldn't mind having some more of that. So yeah, so there's always some facet of that you're sort of working on.
And what's interesting too is there's such a bad image of wealthy people and what they do with wealth. And really, truly, there are the same amount, I don't know if it's the same amount, but I feel like, of poor people that are bad and poor people that are good, and wealthy people that are bad and wealthy people that are good. It's like they're everywhere, at every vibration. And I will tell you, some of the most wealthy people I know give back the most. They're able to. And so it's a frequency, and the frequency, what I've been shown, of love and money is the same. And you can see why we have so many problems around love and money. Oh
yes. Yeah, you are 100%, I think, right on that one, because they do have a very similar frequency. I mean, energetically and vibrationally, absolutely.
Like, I don't deserve love, I don't deserve money, or people that are really like nailed the frequency with wealth, but then have a mess in their relationships, or vice versa. It's all about energy. And I had a conversation with two girlfriends, and one is in their 70s and one is in her 50s. And so they're both older than me. And they were talking about how they do not like how there's so much preaching to younger people about, you can do whatever you want. Like Oprah being like, you can be and you can do whatever you want. And I'm very optimistic. And I was like, I want to have this conversation because I truly believe that I can and will, and everything that life is my buffet. And they said, it's just not true. And what it does is there's a falsity that people get attached to, when really that's not in their design, I think they said. So then they're always disappointed. And I said, wait a second, that's the key word, is design. Because truly, if you're anchored into your heart and your truth, you won't want to be something that's not in alignment. And so before you start the wish list, you have to go inward, because I know I don't want to be an astronaut. I don't want to go to the moon. There's things that I won't desire, but the things I do are in alignment. Now, the things I wanted for myself maybe 15, 20 years ago, like for instance, to work things out with my current relationship that was toxic and not benefiting him or me, that was a wish. But Was it in alignment? No. So my belief is about anything that you desire from a place of truth is probably a match. You just have to get
Yes.
out of your own way.
Yes. Right. I do agree with that. Once you find that alignment, oh man,
I
when
know.
you're doing what you're on this planet for, um, and you combine that with, like you said, your heart-centered decision making. Wow, like look out.
Yeah, you can. And maybe I am wrong, but my life has shown me that you can.
Yeah, and I think it's like define all, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that that's the thing. Like, if we take the lens out and we look to other cultures for what it means to have it all. I mean, like you could be living in a mud house but you have beautiful relationships and you
Mhm.
have beautiful traditions and you create these experiences and you have enough money to live on. So I think everybody should be able to define their all on their own, because I think it is very individualistic. But I think then hopefully we get that opportunity to see how interconnected, just like the web of life, everything is. So that if my all is also, friendly towards the environment, friendly towards other people, um, I think, we can understand how interconnected everything
Yes.
is. But when you do this deep spiritual work and you really get healed and you really get clear, your relationships do get better. Your income increases, your happiness factor, your joy factor goes up.
Your
Maybe
health.
you're having better sex. I mean, it's all related. You begin caring more for yourself, so you eat better.
Mhm.
It just, it's all connected.
Yeah. And we talked earlier on our walk, just about that it's, if the soul abandons the body, you will get sick. If the body abandons the soul, you will get sick. And you're co-creating. And there is, whether you say God, divine, spirit, there's a flicker of
Yeah.
that divinity in you. And that is a soul that you have a responsibility to be in communication with and take care of. But you also have a responsibility to take care of the temple that you're in while you're doing the work. And that's where people kind of go wrong. And you said something that I feel like is so true. And it's 99% of the people you work with are disassociated, like they are not in their body.
Yes. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the trauma is, what we have been taught. And, this is where my scientific background, even the people that are in my, body work background, right?
Mhm.
Like so many of the masters, the experts are saying the body's just a vessel. Even deep in Buddhist, which I studied for 3 years, but even deep in Buddhist traditions, some of them, like the body's just a vessel. It's going to, at some point stop working the way that we want it to. And I say yes. And it doesn't, I think it is, I think our human bodies are designed so intelligently. And I think that that's where the original intelligence really is. We will never duplicate that with artificial intelligence. And that's why I call it the original intelligence, because it's designed by nature.
I agree with you. I think it's when they came out with the iPhone, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the physical tool of what we could do psychically. But instead of working on our psychics to communicate, our psychic ability to communicate, which we still do, but we don't give it attention and we don't exercise it in the right way. So we're
Yes.
not going to master it. We're going to continue to make physical devices that try to mirror what we're capable of without.
Yes, always. I mean, I feel like that's what they're trying to duplicate is the human mind,
Mhm.
or,
And make us reliable on it.
yes,
Take us away
exactly.
from our genius, the genius we're born with, the 4 and 5-year-old that walk around. Like, go spend time with a child and just watch them.
Yeah.
They are so awake.
They are so awake, and they're so absolutely in awe of so many things in life. And they're also so in touch with their human emotions.
Yes.
You know?
Unapologetic, which is
Yeah.
like my theme this year is no more apologies, like no more
Yeah.
apologies. It's just, I'm so tired of being sorry.
Right. Yeah. We just had this conversation yesterday in my speaking group where, the ways that we apologize as human beings, mostly as women, and especially when we're getting ready to get on the stage, and it can be something ever so small, not moving around on the stage to take up space.
Mhm.
That's like, that is a form of apologizing for taking up space.
Yeah.
So the very subtle ways that happens and pervades our lives. So yeah, I mean, honestly, get a kid on stage, they're going to take up all the space, they're going to take up all the energy, they're going to take up all the attention.
They're not going to care what they look like.
Yeah, that's
They're going to
exactly.
pick their nose if they have an itch.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna, maybe, I don't know, turn their back to you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so,
They might lay down. They might get
yeah, they
tired.
might lay down, might even have a temper tantrum. I don't know, but
Oh,
they may say
no.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Children also, I love that a baby especially, they'll cry and then they'll let the tears out and then they'll be smiling. And we forget to
Yeah.
do that as adults,
Yeah.
because emotions need to be released. And when they're not released, they stay in the body. And then over time, they become this mountain. And then we really don't want to cry because we're going to cry much longer than what we needed to prior. And then we're going to be labeled dramatic or too sensitive.
Yes.
And so there's
Yeah.
so much in our body. So I love that you know about somatics. And it sounds like your training was, when did you do your training?
So I did my training in 2008, 9, and 10.
Amazing. So you were one
Yeah.
of the first, not first, because I know it's been around a very, very long time, but it's really trendy right now. And it's like everybody's studying somatics right now.
Yeah. When I started it, and I actually remember Eric Franklin saying in our third year, he said, "Look, I'm not going to lie to you. People are going to think you're crazy.
Mhm.
They're not going to understand what you're saying. And you are going to have a challenging time giving this information to people and explaining it." And he wasn't wrong. I remember thinking so many times, oh my gosh, I'm just beating my head against the wall because people don't understand how important this is. And because so much of it was imagery driven, it's taking the mind to a place where we don't utilize that part of our brains. Once we reach 6, 7 years of age, it's beaten out of us or reprogrammed. And
That's a theta or alpha. What state of that is that we kind of like?
well, alpha's probably, yeah, we go from theta to alpha, right? Where
Okay.
we
That's
get
so hard to
into,
remember. I'm so bad at the,
yeah, this beautiful, like peaceful state of mind where creativity, like the mind is open and things just begin to come to us. But then we got to go into alpha where it's like, oh, okay,
yeah,
all this
do,
other
do,
stuff
do.
comes into it. But it is so interesting to me that, over time, I have seen the shift where all of the sudden and he said, you're going to be saying words, orgokinematics, you're going to be saying bone rhythms, you're going to be saying, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like these are words nobody, like we called it dynamic neurocognitive imagery. And nobody knew what the hell that meant. But it was an experience that you could give someone. And, that idea of, people thought Thomas Edison was crazy. They thought
Yeah.
Nikola Tesla was crazy. They thought
Mhm.
Oprah was probably crazy. I mean, the people who are visionaries who have this new thought are going to meet resistance in the beginning
Yeah.
because it's a whole new way of thinking and being. But once people begin to develop a language for it through experience, they start to have proof in their bodies. You can't argue with how you feel.
Yes.
And once they experience it, it's yeah, you can't argue with that. Well,
And
you
I just love that it teaches us we're not broken. Like we all have trauma. It's very normal. And
yes.
we are absolutely equipped to heal if
Yes.
we allow ourselves to do the work. And it is cognitive, and it is somatic, and it is spiritual, and it is all of these different things. And I love it all. I mean, we talked about it. Psychology was one of my first loves. And I don't think I'll ever not love psychology, because it gives me the words and the language and the tools to communicate what I want to say. But the vibration and the feeling and the spirituality is, when I get up in front of a room, I know what to say. I'm not reading from a textbook. I'm not reading from something that I got certified in, because that is somebody else's words, that's somebody else's download. And my download is going to be more impactful, because it's going to move through me in the moment of need of the women in front of me.
100%. Yeah, you make it your own. And the big word at the time, our work is embodiment work.
Yeah.
And you embody that expression, that feeling, that vibration. And yeah, once you embody it, it's in your body.
Yes.
It now becomes you. It's so beautiful to watch.
One of my biggest struggles was so embodiment is like a buzzword in the spiritual community for sure. And when a teacher was like, you cannot teach something until you've embodied it. And it really delayed my time to dive into doing this professionally, because I have a very high expectation for what full embodiment means. And I have a belief that we are never fully embodied, because that we would just die then. You know what I mean? Like so it's about having the experience of feeling it on a visceral level, and embodiment. Like I say this because I always get I never want to like push people away. And there's a term called spiritual bypassing. And I didn't really know what that is, but now I kind of do. And it's usually using terms that make people feel like they have to do or feel a certain thing to behave in a certain way. And really, I've already, in this moment, and 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever I was, there's certain things that I've embodied, and I will energetically attract people that are similar to past versions of myself, because I have information that can serve them. And so if I'm always waiting to embody what I think in my mind is the work, I'm actually not doing my divine calling, and that's being of service, because I've always been able to heal. I've always been able to be of service. It's just not to everybody, but I never will be for everybody.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to be for everybody. This much I'm very clear on at this point in my life. There's some people that no, we're not a good match. That's cool.
Yeah.
The embodiment thing, which I think that's what I appreciated about Eric's work, was that it made it very approachable.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could embody the smallest of things. I could embody, for example, like if I wanted my arm to move in a feminine way, I could just embody that. Like, what would that
look like? Guys,
like?
Debbie is so beautiful, and she used to be a ballerina, and she's waving her arm, and I'm so jealous, because if I wave my arm, I'll probably fall off the chair because I'm not coordinated at all. So like, I want to see you dance. Like, I have to see you dance sometime, because you're just so beautiful, and that flow right there just really.
Thank you. Right, but I look at you, Jenny, and I say, she embodies the divine feminine.
Oh, thank you.
I look at you and I see this beautiful balance of the masculine and the feminine. We forget that even the smallest of things that we do, like what is masculine, what is feminine? If, for example, the feminine is tuning in, if it's becoming, you're just listening to what does your heart say, what does your gut say, right? That's that intuitive answers coming from within. That's very feminine. However, the message that comes forth, now I need to get into masculine mode and discern. Discernment is a masculine way of saying, what would actually serve me best?
Mm-hmm.
You go back into the feminine, you go, okay, I'm going to feel this. Does this feel like a resonance? Does it feel like a dissonance? Does it feel like a yes or a no? And then you take action, then you're back into the masculine based on what that feminine. It's so fascinating to me because there's such subtleties. And I think you embody that balance beautifully.
Thank you. I will take that. I will absolutely take that with an open heart. So thank you. I
As you should, my dear.
appreciate it. There's been
Well done.
work done on both sides. Um, I know a lot of people, some people don't like this gentleman, Jordan Peterson. I find him fascinating. He is just very conservative. And so some of his work, as in when you listen to a feminist author or anyone, you kind of have to sift through it and get to the message and the meat and potatoes. But he refers to the feminine energetics as chaos. And I think that really bugs a lot of women. But I'm like, it's really from like that actually, it fits me, because when I'm deeply in my feminine, I am chaos. And so I have to have my masculine come in to help teach, or I mean, I would have 14 conversations all at different times and and probably
Yeah.
I'd get to the end of it, but it would be much more sloppy.
Yeah. Well, that is such a great illustration of, the feminine superpower, right, is the ability to, like Kaylee with the 8 arms, right? Or Lakshmi, like she can touch all the things at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, it's that discernment of like, what is the importance? What's the message? All of that. So 100%, we need both.
Yeah, we
We
do.
need both. Yeah, exactly. That's such a great representation of it and illustration. Yeah, we need both. And that's the thing that I really try and impress upon the women that I work with is, yeah, we're going to, because there's so much in their masculine, we need to get into that feminine, but then I want you to find the balance, because
Yes.
you can have all these feelings, but if you're never taking action or you're never actually doing something about it, now
Mm-hmm.
you're stuck in the
The
feminine.
feminine feels out of control. Like it really does. The feminine energetics can feel out of control when
Right.
two on the feminine side. But that it's within and through, and we both know this, through that out of control is an invitation to surrender. And when you surrender with proper intention, opens the portal for whatever you're manifesting, whatever you're desiring. And so
Mhm.
on the cusp of that really like chaotic, I'm not in control. How could I even think that way? I can't get divorced even though I don't like my husband because I'll lose the house and like people, they have these narratives, and it's
Yeah.
like until you can leap through the chaos, through the uncertainty, then you'll never be in full surrender and your life won't change.
No, because honestly, I mean, once you realize you're not in control, you never were, but the
Yeah. Yep.
divine is, spirit is always like,
Mhm.
everything in your life has already been, the decision's been made for you. And we somehow like to think that either we can't make the decision, or, if we make it, it's going to be the wrong one, where spirit's just like, oh, sweetie,
I know.
I am trying to help you out here. So yeah, the more we surrender to that divine, flow,
Yep.
wow, as soon as you do that, it's a very empowered state to live from.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. There's a mantra that we used in Jouvois, and it was actually initiated to me from a girlfriend of my son's who's 20 years old, and her name is Diana. She's Ukrainian, and I met her this summer, and you can imagine what she's experiencing. She had to leave her family, her brother and mother and father, to come to the States. She had a host family during high school that she came and studied abroad, and
Wow.
they went and got her. I mean,
Wow.
amazing story. Beautiful, stunningly beautiful. And now
Yeah.
I actually know that she's probably going to listen to this because we have a very, very beautiful relationship. So
I
Deanna, hello.
love that.
But she and Alex decided to go their separate ways. And I think it was probably a little bit of Alex going to college and knowing that she was, leaving the country. And I was heartbroken. And so I messaged her and was like, we just had such beautiful times together. We both have the spirit animal of a pig. Like, I just adore her. And I just wanted her to know how much I adored her. And she's like, no need to apologize. Like, I trust my life. And just in that moment, I'm like, okay, if my boyfriend broke up with me at 20, I was not in a place of I trust my life. I was depressed, probably making a therapy session and getting drunk with my friends. And
Yeah.
the power in that statement moved me. And since that day, I've taken on that statement and then helped educate others of it comes down to one thing. I trust my life.
That is powerful.
Oh,
That,
20
okay,
years
I might
old.
have to also take Deanna's.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
I know. I love her. I have goosebumps telling that story because she's just a force. She's a
Yeah.
force.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. That's the piece that's missing. Oh, there's the Chihuahua. She's showing up now.
Hello.
Penny is using her feminine voice now. So
She's like, I've taught you things. Talk about me.
yeah, right. Hello, I'm a little feminine Chihuahua.
Oh, it just reminds me that the souls coming in are just so much more awake with every generation. And I have
Yes.
always believed that our youth are, I mean, there's a song that the children are our teachers, but my
Yeah.
children specifically, I know I have a soul contract with them that they teach me in the spirit and I teach them in the human. My job is to raise them and teach them how to do the human, and their job is to humble
Yes.
me, point the things out my soul needs to know. And I believe our children are older than us.
Yeah.
And the fact that, he's attracted to Deanna and they came together, and on her profile, it said HSP. And I was like, oh my gosh, highly sensitive person. And she's like, nobody knows what that means. I'm like, I do,
Yeah.
she's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to that idea, like, whenever at some point in our past lives, in our, before we were incarnated, we made an agreement to show up at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that our children chose us. And just like you said, that relationship, it's very symbiotic. We are here to teach one another. And I have lived my life, and my kids know that. And I think that they agree. What am I here to learn from you? And what are you here to learn from me? Very, very different approach to living your life. But I think that to me, it makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah. And I always have parented from a place of what is going to serve their soul, because they're very different. So it's really hard to have house rules when they might not be conducive to both of them or make sense, even though society really wanted me to behave in a certain way. And shame snuck in and was like, all the moms are going to judge you by not making your son wear a winter coat when it's 10 degrees out. And him being self-expressive with his jerseys that he wanted to wear in elementary school was worth it than that battle and that ruining every morning, because it was fueled by what are other moms going to think of me. It wasn't fueled by, do I really think he's going to be cold? Because if he was really going to be cold, he'd probably bring a freaking jacket.
Exactly. I mean, natural consequences. If he's cold, he'll wear a jacket.
Yes.
If he gets cold enough. I mean, I pick your battles.
Yep. Yeah. So I definitely probably raised them a lot like you raised your children. And it was a very different approach than what I was being programmed to do.
Oh, totally. I'm going to see if I can calm this Chihuahua down, but yeah, I can remember, especially where we lived, out in the country, and everybody was super judgmental to the point where it would have been so easy to just really, get into that mindset of like, oh, what's everybody going to think? I didn't care. Just didn't care. It was easier to stay in my own skin than it was to worry about what everybody else was going to think.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to ask really quick, if you don't mind sharing, what programs or offerings do you currently have that people could work with you in? I really think I love your energy. I'm excited to work with you. And I think it's your Divine Awakening program, but is there anything else going on? I'd love for you to share.
Yes, actually. So in the next month, I have 2 courses. One of them is actually Introduction to the Divine Feminine. It's a great entryway into what the divine feminine looks like. What does it feel like? How do you tap into it? And then the other one is, and it kind of goes along with that, but it's a little bit more kind of that connection to the divine, is developing your intuition.
Yes, I think a lot of people would love to actually utilize that. That is a question I get a lot. And it, as you probably are going to teach, it's different for everybody.
It really is. And, whether you end up, talking to people from the other side or whatever it is, or, having this relationship with spirit, it's also another sneaky way of saying, let's get you into your body
Yeah.
and trusting yourself. The
Yeah.
trust is the biggest part of that, because I feel like so many women I work with, they don't trust themselves. They don't even know who they are anymore, or what it is that, when they receive, divine intervention or messages, they don't know what to do with that. They don't trust it.
I know. The body is our GPS, and the communicator is our feelings and emotions. And if you're not allowing yourself to be here and feel and emote and express, then you're missing the message.
Totally. I just, I guess that, yes, that is the world I live in. But to me, it just makes sense. If we don't, I guess it's, I liken it to a Christian not having a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And what are you, what are you here for?
Yeah. Waiting to die.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad, but I think it's kind of how a lot of people are living right now. They're fearful of death, but they're not doing anything to change their experience here, or know how amazing it can be.
Absolutely. Because, I don't think we're afraid of dying. I think we're afraid of living.
Oh,
And,
God.
instead of just, surviving, what about thriving?
Yeah.
There will be times that you're going to struggle, that you're going to have challenges, but I also really believe you weren't put on this earth to suffer.
No. So you're gonna maybe like this, but we talked about Gordon Smith, and one of the things that he believes, and when he said it, it was like, yes, like I was too afraid to say this out loud, but when he said it, I'm like, yeah, what he said, like, I completely agree. And this is how I look at things, is that on the other side, there truly is only light consciousness, and there are no dark spirits. There's dark energy, but that comes from a place of the human mind. And so really the human experience is as close as we're going to get to hell. And this is where the darkness resides. And so when people feel like they're being haunted, there is dark energy, there is darkness, but it's not like on the other side. There's no demonic energies trying to like attack us. And that resides with me. It really does. I know people will fight me on it, but that's what I want to believe. It feels in every cell of my body. I was like, oh my gosh, yes. Like, we are our own God. We are our own devil. There's this beautiful poem called My Law, or The Law. And it was written in the 1800s, but it's so our reality. It's our shadow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I know a lot of people who have some, well, it's kind of that, it makes me think of the Buddhist philosophy, like, your experience here on this, at this time on this planet, can either be hell or heaven.
Yeah.
You get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
You get to choose. And for some people it is hellish. And I don't know. I've always said that to my kids, because we have these conversations about religion versus spirituality and, all of these far out things. But I've always said, like, you get to decide as to, your version of your life on this planet here. But I don't know that hell, the perceived hell, could be any worse than what some people are experiencing on this planet. I can't imagine it. They are so tortured. And so that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew I kind of dug that guy, but
He's fascinating. I cannot wait to have him on the podcast. I can't even believe it's happening.
That's extraordinary. I cannot. You got a couple episodes coming up I can't wait for.
Oh, and I can't wait for people to get to know you, especially Northern Colorado people. Like, this is a great opportunity to be able to do things in person again. And I know that everyone's hungry for that. Debi does retreats. She does this Divine Awakening program that's a 6-week container. So I'm going to put her website in the show notes, of course. She also is on Instagram, Debi_Kennison.
Yes.
Correct. And it's 1 B in the Debi, right?
Yes. DEBI.
Okay. So all that will be in the show notes. just
I
check her
love
out.
it.
She's amazing.
I think you're pretty amazing too.
I'm so happy we met.
I know,
do you
me
have any-
too. This was just like, I don't know. It made my year. This made my
Aw,
year.
that means a lot, especially because we're like at the end of it. Oh my
I know. Well, let me tell you, sometimes you just need that little cherry on the top.
Aw,
And
I'll be
girl,
your cherry.
yeah. Yeah, be my cherry, will you?
Oh, that makes me feel so good. Thank you, Debbie.
I
Is there
love it.
anything else you want to say or add before we bring it to a close?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, light workers, I think for everybody right now, I guess I just want to say keep trusting. I know it feels like right now a bit of a slog, and it feels like it's hard to have faith and trust right now, but everything you're going through right now is for your own, for the planet's growth. I really feel that way. And so thank you for doing all the work that you do for women and for humankind, because I really think it's going to take everybody
Yeah,
if we really want, change.
I agree.
So yeah.
My spiritual mentor that I mentioned, Danielle Serenk, she says, trust or bust.
That is awesome. Trust or bust. I love that.
Trust or bust.
Yeah.
All right, Debbie. Well, thank you again for being on today. We will be in touch. And
Yes.
you guys, check out the show notes. Check out Debbie.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Hey, spirit knows spirit.
Spirit, no spirit.
Yep.
All right. You
I
guys
love
have a
it.
beautiful weekend.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny.
You're welcome.
Bye.